This part 2 is going to be a bit chopped up. I started jumping between working on the radio and discussing items with the cabinetry and the turntable and so forth, and I just kept jumping back and forth. I had a lot of interruptions going on. So I'm going to try to separate out working on the chassis and working on the cabinetry. So please excuse the fact that this is going to seem a little bit disjointed. And in the video I mentioned at one point that the reason this is 200 to 300 is those are channel allocations for the FM. And you can go online and download this list, which has all the frequencies, and the alignment I believe calls for 105 megahertz. Let's see here, they want us to go to, yes, 105 megahertz to align the dial. I will be using 104.9, which is channel 285. These are 5 channel increments. In other words, 200, 25, 30, 35, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So these are 5 channel increments. So 200 to 205, so on up the dial. The channel or the frequency for 104.9 falls on channel 285, which is exactly on one of these tick marks, and since I can accurately dial that in with my signal generator, that's just as good a frequency to use as the 105 megahertz that they want, because 149.9 will be close enough to where the alignment point is, and it'll give me an indicator right on the scale, if that makes sense, I hope. So please excuse this being a little chopped up, and it'll be the same when the cabinet discussion comes in as well. Hello, and welcome back to part 2 of the Midwest Model 916 restoration. Since we were last together, we've made 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or maybe it was 2 steps forward and 2 steps back. That remains to be seen. This radio appears to have never been touched, with the exception of the electrolytic filter caps. The dual 20, or excuse me, the quad 20 microfarad that had 2 pairs paralleled up to make a 40-40. Obviously somebody's been in here before, and somebody's replaced those. Now I've got 240 microfarad in here. I couldn't make a bottom disc to fit, but the 2 caps are stuffed in there, well insulated, and I've got heavy 16 gauge bus bar coming out. These things are stiff. These are as good as having terminals on the bottom. So a little extra flux. You can see this was in here before me. So somebody's come in here and changed the filter cap at some point, but everything else underneath here was absolutely factory. So far the gut pile is this. This is the one from the ratio detector. This was a cathode bypass cap and a bunch of bypass capacitors. These 2 resistors came out of the ratio detector. One was spot on and the other one was almost double its value. So just to make sure that the ratio detector was going to balance, I replaced these 2 resistors. And I had a set of Allen Bradley carbon composition that are new old stock, that measure absolutely spot on. They measure exactly 15K. They are right on the money, the 2 of them. Just luck. But I had them in the box, and they're clean and new, new old stock. They'll be fine. Most of the other resistors in here, or actually all of these white objects you see, are capacitors with resistors in the center. There's a resistor going through the center of these. They're all 20% resistors. Some of them are close to 25 out of tolerant, or 25 out, but I'm not going to mess with them. I'm going to leave them alone. You can't get these capacitors. These are glass ceramic capacitors with a resistor on the inside. Those capacitors virtually never go bad. Trying to dig a resistor out of there to replace it, I'll destroy the cap. I'm sure they're going to be fine. The thing, you know, once I've done an alignment, it'll be good to go. We have yet to replace our terminal strip. I haven't done that yet. What did I find? Oh, I went through and did a quick check of the tubes. The FM on this obviously wasn't working. There's a 6C4 here that, while the heater was good, the heater lights up, absolutely zero emission. Even when I kick the heater voltage up to a higher level, zero emission. Totally dead. So we've replaced that with a new 6C4. And this is a 6BE6. This is the FM converter, barely moved the needle off the stop pin when I put it in the tester. I clicked it from 6 volts to 12 on the filament, or the heater, and went upstairs and had lunch. And when I came back down after it had sat for half an hour, 45 minutes at 12 volts, I dropped the heater voltage back down to 6. Yes, I was taking a chance on blowing the heater out of it. Didn't much care, the tube wasn't any good. It now reads at the top of the questionable range. I put a brand new tube in this, or a new old stock tube in the set for the converter. I'll keep this in my emergency pile. It now seems pretty stable at the high end of the questionable range. It should work in some applications. Tubes are getting rare. I try to keep, let me turn that thing down. I try to keep as many as I can without throwing them away. Handful of waxy caps that I've replaced with orange drops, so we should be good in that respect. Oh, here's an interesting thing. While I was looking for schematics for this on eBay, I spotted this. Installation and operating instructions for the Midwest Series 16 Series Super Deluxe AM/FM radio receiver. And I saw that, and I've got this as a 916. I said, oh, this is the operating manual for it, and I ordered it. It wasn't a lot of money. It was very inexpensive, actually. And it got here, and it's not my exact radio. This is for the 816. Mine is the 916, and it appears the only difference between the two is the 816. I thought I had a picture in here somewhere. The 816 doesn't have the indicator lights. Oh, here. It doesn't have the row of indicator lights on each side here and here. It appears to be the only difference. The schematics are virtually identical. A couple of very minor differences. This one only has a single bypass cap to ground. Mine has 2 bypass caps to ground, and that actually shows up in this schematic here, the dual caps. Something that doesn't show up in either one of these is this flex ohm resistor, which is here, and that is in the B plus line right here coming out of the rectifier. I don't know if that was a factory mod. It must have been. Those solder joints look like they've never ever been touched, so that's probably been in there virtually forever. Probably an upgrade at some point in time. This says 1948, by the way, 1948 model. So we have the operating instructions and alignment information. This actually has alignment information and the schematic in it, which is kind of nice. This is all original. Oh, and found something here. These radios are manufactured in Ohio, and inside of here there's a list of radio stations: WKBN, WJR, WPIC, yada yada yada. So I said, let's see where this book, where the owner of this book lived, and I looked up all of these radio stations. 4 of the 6 are what they call clear channel stations. WJR is a 50 kilowatt clear channel. KDKA is a 50 kilowatt clear channel. WTAM is a clear channel, and WWVA is a clear channel. So that didn't give me any location information. However, the WKBN, this one here, is a 5 kilowatt station, and the WPIC is another low power station, 1.3 kilowatt daytime, 58 watts nighttime. Now these two stations are these two radio stations are 13 miles apart, and if you go to the center of that, it's Hubbard, Ohio, which is right on the Pennsylvania-Ohio border. So this owner's manual never went very far from Ohio after he bought his radio. He lived right in that area. He was either in Pennsylvania on the Ohio line or right on the Pennsylvania line in Ohio, either side of that, because both of those stations can't be heard very far. They're low-powered stations. So I'm guessing he lives somewhere near the middle of the two of them, whoever this manual belonged to. All right, moving on to the radio again. The alignment instructions say that you need the AM antenna plugged in, and this is a copy of the schematic from the book. It's a lot clearer than the one I downloaded off the internet, and I'm still waiting on my SAMs to show up. But this AM antenna has to be plugged in to start doing any alignments. And I meant to mention, the reason I tested all of the tubes without even trying the radio first, which is not normal for me. I usually just go ahead and try the set with the tubes that are in it. This thing is full of Loctals. It has octals, Loctals, and 7-pin miniature. The Loctal tubes are known for having socket problems. They corrode and make poor connection. It's just, they're horrible. Even when these sets were only 20 years old, way back when I first started doing this, Loctal sockets that were only 10 or 15 years old were having problems. We're getting on this set now, 1948. This thing's 75 years old at this point. And there's 2 or 3 of the sockets that are in really good shape, but all of them have at least 1 or 2 pins. One of them has 4 pins that are very, very corroded. Did my best to clean them up and put some deoxit in there. Went in with a tiny little wire brush and cleaned them up as best I could, and I'll keep my fingers crossed. That's the reason I started pulling tubes out, is I wanted to check the tube sockets, and I figured while I got them out, I'll test them all. And that's how I came across the 2 dead tubes. There's a couple of the Loctals that are in the questionable range, but they're in the audio chain. I'm not even going to worry about it. They'll work just fine. If they were RF amplifiers or the converter tube or an oscillator tube, you might have a problem. But just because they're a little weak in the audio chain, they'll be fine. They're not even in the power. In fact, the 7C5 output tubes test brand new. They're just like brand new tubes. They're in the first and second audio stage, and they won't be a problem. You remember this was broken. This was the ground and FM antenna connections. And the way these are made, they're more or less riveted into the phenolic. So taking these apart and reassembling them is kind of out of the question. If I still had access to a machine shop like I did when I was working, I'd probably see if I could come up with something different, but those days are gone. No longer have access to a fully equipped machine shop. And finding one of these with 2-inch on center with 3 connections, I spent several days looking on the internet and found nothing. So decided to make my own. And this is what I came up with. I had some old binding posts, and that's mounted on there. This is an alternative one. I had this style of binding post as well. I made up an extra one. This is a piece of Lexan. It's probably about twice as thick. In fact, it's almost exactly twice as thick as the original material. But it's what I had in the junk box. I put the holes in it, series of holes in it at the right diameter, and then gave it a coat of mahogany paint on both sides so that it, you know, it's a little bit darker than the original, but on the radio it looks okay. I decided to go with this style because these are just too tall. Looking on the back, they just stuck out too far and looked kind of gawky. So I'm going with these, although I do like the other ones better. They have the hole through the center and everything else on the other one. But this will work. My FM antenna will go here, and we have a ground here. I managed to solder the wires from the antenna coil on the FM back on these two terminals. Those wires are 6.5 thousandths of an inch in thickness, and just for reference, paper is about 4 to 4.5. Your post-it note, your standard post-it note, is 4 thousandths of an inch. So they're barely any bigger than a piece of paper. But we managed to get them soldered on here. There was enough length. Fortunately, they broke off at the terminals when this thing got ripped off and didn't pull out of the coil, because those coils are buried down inside this assembly, and taking that apart out of the question unless there is no other way, unless it's a last resort. This piece is so complex, so compact, and so buried, it's just not safe to do. It's like when you see David Tipton pass on adjusting some of the IF cams that he knows they're going to break if he has to adjust them. It's the same type of thing. When you're full of coils like that with 6 thousandths diameter wire, leave well enough alone if you can. I'm hoping everything was okay. I'm hoping the rest of the coil's okay. It has continuity. I have continuity between the two terminals, so the coil appears to be intact up inside that assembly. What else? I guess that's about it. Oh, we did pull the AM antenna out of the cabinet. That wasn't a big deal. I have some feeler gauge material, a couple thousandths of an inch, smoothed it up on 800 grit paper so that it wouldn't scratch or tear the paper, and managed to slide it up under the staples and slid those out. And I'll just put a fresh set of staples in it when I remount it. And I think we're ready to put some power on this. All the caps have been changed. The original power cord is actually in good condition. This may have been changed at some point in time, I suspect. So for now we'll use this. And we're going to be on an isolation transformer with current limiting anyway. Looks like somebody drove their car over this plug, but other than that, it's in pretty good condition. What else? I guess that's it. Did I mention earlier about the iTube? I think I talked about the iTube earlier. I did a video on iTubes and how to get some more life out of them. I tested the iTube that's in there. It's extremely dim, and what I'll probably end up doing is increasing the target voltage. I think it's about 185 volts supplied as it is, but there's places in here where I can pick up 200 and up to 350 volts if I have to bring the target voltage up. And yes, that's going to be hard on the target, but if the tube's not usable anyway, get a little more life out of it, is my outlook. And that when the target voltage doesn't do the trick anymore, I can put a little voltage doubler on the heater circuit, and it won't quite go double because of the AC waveform, but yada yada yada. It'll probably increase the filament voltage by about 50, or heater voltage by about 50%, and that'll give you some extra life. So we'll see where we have to go with that. These tubes I think I mentioned, I can't remember whether I mentioned earlier in the video. They're like 75 bucks a piece now for new old stock in the box. All right. Oh, I did order a solid state kit for the iTube, and there's a fellow in Canada selling them. Here's his website, and you can go on his website. He sells the PC boards, and he has the parts lists that you can order the parts from DigiKey to do the assembly. I'm going to swing this thing around, plug the antenna in. I've already got the speaker in. I'm going to rearrange stuff on the table so that I can get to the Variac, and we'll put some power to this puppy. Alright, I should be able to bring this up now at this point. It has been recapped. I did check the power supply circuit for shorts using my go/no-go tester for the filter caps. The caps appeared to charge normally in the set, no short circuits. I didn't check any of the windings on the power supply, but looking at the condition of this radio, I'm pretty confident it's going to be fine. Turn the Variac all the way down. The Variac's hot, and we're on dim bulb, so we should be safe enough to start bringing this up. And we're about 30 volts right there. Do we have any sign of... Okay, we're drawing about 200 milliamperes. Yeah, that's on. 200 milliamps. Goes away, comes back. Okay. I don't see any light bulb activity yet. I don't know what the condition of all the lamps are. Didn't pull any of them out to check them. Let's turn the volume all the way up. Okay. Let's bring up some more voltage. Okay, through the dim bulb right now we've got 37 volts. It reads a lot higher on the Variac, of course, because we're drawing some current. Drawing 12 watts, almost 300 milliamperes. We got dim bulb. I have a pilot lamp over here lit dimly, and one over here lit dimly. We're on... This is pointing in the wrong direction. Okay, there's band A. Band A lamp is lit. That's FM. Standard broadcast is B, so I'm going to go to B because I don't have an FM antenna on there yet. I can't see if that lamp is lit or not. Oh, there it is. Poor connection. Came on as soon as I touched it. Volume is up. Don't see any life in the rectifier yet. We're only at 50 volts. There's 55. There's 60 volts. About 20 watts. 0.3. 330 milliamperes. No grid caps to stick my finger on here. I don't see any indication that the rectifier has got light on it. I know the rectifier tube's good. I tested it. Oh, okay, it's slightly warm. It just isn't glowing enough for me to see it. I think I am going to bypass the dim bulb and go full power here. We're drawing less than half an amp, 70 volts, 80. There's 100 volts. Oh. Okay. It woke up.
One thing that I fear about being a parent is the future for my children. I think a parent's job is to protect their children, but also...
And you can see over here, I think, yeah. Maybe if I turn out some of these lights, you can see this as the volume goes down, comes up. Looks like the switch needs some cleaning. I'm going to go for broke here. That's only 78 volts. Let's bring it up to 120. Actually, we'll bring it up to 150.
Was a blessing and the best place for her. Talking to the doctors and nurses, they were on top of it. They got this. We got this. It's gonna be okay. We're gonna get through this. Here, it's like a celebration of life. There's so much great stuff happening. The doctors and nurses.
Okay, there's 115 volts.
You could tell that they love her, and you could tell that relationship is just amazing. We're just so grateful for them.
St. Jude Children's
The eye tube has some life in it.
Finding cures, saving children.
It's not real bright, but it is working.
New Hampshire has a kinship navigation program designed to strengthen and support the well-being of caregivers, children, and their families. Kinship navigation is free, voluntary, and confidential, and it links grandparents, relatives, and family friends taking care of children who are not their own with benefits, school support, legal aid, and much more. The program is a partnership between the New Hampshire Children's Trust
All right.
and the state's network
AM's
of family
working.
resource centers. NHChildren'sTrust.org.
Let's see if the other bands work. Here's shortwave is working on that band. That's C, D. Now, bear in mind, there's no shortwave antenna on this. Even the book doesn't say anything about how to add an external antenna. But it appears to be working. Let me grab the FM antenna and we'll see if the FM band works. Okay, the FM band works, but it only gets about 3 stations and it's very distorted. So I'm wondering if somebody got in there and put the golden screwdriver to this, trying to make it work with the dead tubes. So we're going to have to let these tubes that I put in here age a little bit, and then we'll go through and do an alignment. There's one station. There's another one. Oh, another one. And another one.
This is Fresh Air, the new podcast Dreamtown.
The store Avalon Trail is about as smart California desert.
That distortion sounds like the discriminator or the ratio detector is way out of adjustment, alignment. One of the first things I want to do is check some cathode voltages, make sure that the output tubes aren't frying themselves. And after we've done that, and this will have some time on it, then we'll take a look at alignment. I will probably go ahead and check all the cathode voltages offline. You've seen me do that. You've seen many people do that many times. So we'll take care of that and come back. Okay, I think we're going to wrap this one up at this point. We're at the 30-minute mark. People start losing interest typically around the 30-minute mark, and I've had enough people tell me I yammer on too much as it is. I did get my SAMs in, and boy, I'm glad I did. These are just so much clearer, so much more detail. Verified what I thought about the output transformer on the other speaker being, the wrong one. I was able to, it's got the complete parts lists in here and a lot clearer alignment information. And Sam's does great things like all of the vacuum tubes in here in the string. When you got a set with 16 tubes in here, it's easy to get turned around. They're labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so forth. And you have a picture here that tells you the location, so you can glance there, say, oh, this is tube 6, or look at the schematic. You know exactly where you're going on the chassis. These are such a joy to work with. Now, this is not my radio. This is the SG model, and mine's the SC, I think. Pretty sure it's SC. At any rate, they're identical. The only difference being the cabinet and these lights here are not on the other models. This is the top of the line, ultra high compression chrome reverse, deluxe super, whatever you want to call it. We'll do some more alignment stuff. We'll touch on a bunch of stuff in the next video. But for now, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for stopping by. Please click the like button. It helps a lot with the YouTube getting my video out there to other people. And I guess that's it for now. Take care. It's been fun, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.